Good to have you with us. After 4.5 months, the Oscar Pistorius murder trial is coming to an end. Closing arguments are scheduled for the 7th and 8th of August. Today, the state submitted its heads of argument, which summarises their case ahead of next week. Now, let's bring into the conversation eNCA specialist reporter. Been out in the field with you a few times, Karyn, outside the North Gauteng High Court. We're back there again next week. Heads of argument, closing arguments. For those like me who don't understand what this is, take me through the process.
Well, essentially what happens is that when every witness testifies in this case, there's a running record. So all that testimony is transcribed into these very voluminous documents. And what essentially happens with heads of argument is both the state and defense go through those records and find the pieces of evidence that they believe really help assert their narrative in this case. Of course, the narrative of the state is very much that Oscar Pistorius is guilty of premeditated murder, that he knew it was Reeva Steenkamp behind that toilet door, and he knowingly and deliberately killed her. Of course, the defense will argue that he made a dreadful mistake and is living with the consequences to this day. So essentially what happens is they gather the testimony, they review the record, they put these vast arrays of testimony in bite-sized chunks for the judge, really to try and say, this is what our case is, this is where we find support from the witness evidence, and these are the instances in law where we believe we have made a case for the guilt of the accused or his innocence on the part of the defense.
And forgive me if this once again sounds like a very stupid question, Karyn, I apologize. So do we hear these closing arguments in court? Are they read out, these bite-sized chunks as you call them, or is it merely handing them over to the judge in a formal manner and then everyone goes on their way?
No, what actually happens is the heads are handed over. So we know the state's handed in its heads of argument, and the spokesperson, Nathi Ngube, in a very kind of unusual statement for a spokesman, describing them as brilliant to us when they were handed in. That was just a few moments ago. Essentially what happens is that the heads of argument help the state and the defense to sort of centralize what their key disputes are. And you will often find that while heads may be handed up, certainly they aren't read into the record. They are available to reporters or to the public to be read, particularly once arguments start being made. But they aren't read into the record per se. The kind of contentious issues that the state and the defense really feel are the most important ones, those will be the ones that will be debated and argued. And what you often see is that the judge will say, you know, I want to hear you on this point. I want you to explain this to me. Remember, of course, that then there's an opportunity for a reply from the state. The state argues, the defense argues, and then the state replies. So it is quite a process, but this kind of document process, this process of compiling these documents, really helps both sides and the judge to centralize what the key debates are in this case.
Just by the way, if you're watching at home and you haven't quite been following Karyn Maughan on Twitter, I highly recommend you go do it. It's at Karyn Maughan on Twitter and also at eNCA News. Now, the reason I raise your Twitter handle is obviously many people now following you as a result of Oscar Pistorius and other investigative work. I've got a question in from a viewer, and I'm afraid I've just lost the Twitter handle, but the crux of the tweet was, can either side, obviously the defense or the state, bring in a new witness now? Is there an application, or is it done and dusted? It is now the end, final arguments and go.
Well, it would be extremely unusual. I mean, if there was something particularly crucial, I think that there could then be an application on the behalf of the state and the defense to reopen their case. But certainly I've never seen anything like that, and I very much doubt that that would happen. I think that both sides have closed their case. They've spent a number of weeks preparing their heads of argument. It's now for the defense to hand in their heads, and then next week, Thursday and Friday, we have those crucial final arguments. And
no doubt you'll be all over it as well as always. Karyn Maughan, thank you very much. My apologies to the tweeter. Is that the right word? The tweeter who got hold of us asking Karyn that question. Thank you very much. You can follow Karyn at Karyn Maughan on Twitter. More on that Oscar trial later.
You deserve to know more.
eNCA.com